and as similar as possible. We don't. If that ends up being the true end result, then we want it to look as authentic as possible. So that's kind of our main direction. But on the side, I am, and I have to mention everything, and that is all of the content within the game. That includes pretty much areas and cities and maps, and well, maybe not the maps, because our good friend here is a master map maker. So yeah, I mean, the only concern that I have is the cities and the areas. And the thing is that, as Vassi and as everyone has said, everything was pretty much done by volunteers, so nobody really technically owns it. So I think that the best way to approach that is to either to use the original, because we do want to continue Darkness Falls. We don't want to redo everything for multiple reasons. We want it to continue, but we also want it to be in a new format, if you will, or just a separate entity, which is why Darkness Rises exists. And so I think in that sense, yes, we are borrowing the content that was done by volunteers, and we'll make homages to them. We'll even give them credits. Like, I will do whatever sounds like the right thing to do to make up for the fact that we're using this content, namely like Tamia, Carindel, things like that. We're gonna go ahead and stick with that and see how far that takes us. If at some point somebody says, hey, technically these names are owned by blah blah blah, which is owned by EA or whatever, then okay, no big deal. Like, they're not going to sue us. Proper legal, whatever you want to call it, litigation, just requires certain things, and suing right off the bat doesn't happen that way, especially for something as small as this. So, to summarize, we welcome it. I welcome it. Say, hey, I mean, more people that know about this, maybe the more people that actually get involved, the better. So, EA has, I'm rambling at this point, but EA has constantly said, we're not interested, we're not going to spend the money, we're not going to even research all the stuff needed to even think about going into this, the source code and releasing it. So even, we've been turned down left and right. Okay, so that leaves us to where we are now. We're gonna make it on our own, and to hell with whatever they demand, or whatever the situation is on their end. It doesn't affect us, so they can come and say, stop what you're doing and change the names, and say, okay, no problem, and then we go from there. So that's the only setback that is very unlikely to happen, but we're aware of it, and that's that.
And just to follow up, I've always already said this many times, but there is no way that EA owns every little thing to Darkness Falls. They just don't. And that was one of the reasons why they would never even consider selling it, is for them to find out who owns what is going to take the money to do that. They obviously wouldn't make more on the sale of DF than it would cost them to do all this research and find out exactly who owns what and to consolidate that. And they're not going to be willing, at least from what I can perceivably. I mean, I just don't see them willing to sue over something like that. The only thing for sure that they own is the name. They own the name Darkness Falls, and then the name Darkness Falls, the Crusades. Well, they can't own Darkness Rises. I mean, they can't do it. So if you have a different name than what they already own, you're pretty much already saying that you're not part of their design studio or whatever. So for them to sue over that would just be, it'd be insane on their part. The only way they would sue is if they had a plan for this IP, and they don't, obviously. Not at all. So
very good point. Johnny D, is your intention to recreate the old game and make it better, or make a brand new game like Sura? As you understand it, we are keeping all of the classes and areas, and it seems like you're just remaking it. Very good question. So basically, when I first started talking to Crows, aka the masterful, wonderful, amazing person behind the scenes who's making all this possible, our programmer. Basically, what I did is I pitched him an idea, and that idea was, what if we create a literal continuation of Darkness Falls, the Crusade, um, and include in some ways the events that transpired, i.e., the game shutting down, and then just kind of imagining what is the world in the game experiencing during that time, and during the time over the last 12 years, or rather 10 and a half years, and then just go from there. So he really liked the idea, and I, wrote a bunch of stories. You can see the very first story that started all this on the page you're looking at for the stream. You just scroll down a little bit. It's in the center column. It's very long and in italics. And it was my homage to whoever originally wrote the original story for Darkness Falls, The Crusade, as voiced by Thomas the Tamian, who was a character in Darkness Falls, the original, I believe. Yeah, and so that story is I mean, it's borrowing some names and some ideas, and obviously from the story. But I wrote it, but I don't think I can claim anything. But anyway, so yeah, our aim is to use the same classes, the same guilds, the same races, but it's an evolution. So it's basically the current day Darkness Falls, but in a new package. So yeah, it is essentially, we're remaking it, but that's the foundation. So once the foundation is set, then we're ready to go wild and possibly look at new races, new classes, and just any new ideas that never made it to the old game, or will be considered, but ultimately it'll be our little baby, if you will. Right. Yeah, if there ever was an issue, it's just a matter of replacing text, and that is a very quick problem to fix nowadays. So
yeah, especially whenever you have a baseline to go on, which is what Darkness Rises is ultimately going to be. It's going to be a baseline DFC with a lot of stuff added to it, obviously, as time goes on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Back to work. Yep. I'm trying to finish up the stupid inn in Southern Wars. I'm missing like 2 doors. This is how I'm having to do it. I go into the Echoes client and I type list rooms, and I have a list of all the rooms in that block. So I take the rooms, paste it in a notepad document, and go by room. And if I think it's done, I put a little star by it. So I have to do this like 50 times, but eventually I find the dang thing that's missing. But that's the quickest way I can do it.
Yeah, good idea, Scott. Yeah, we'll upload it to the cloud, and we'll move to various countries in the world. Amen to that, Assyrian. Our buddy Crows is, he's diligent at work, so we'll have some fun things here coming up soon, I'm sure. Note to self: limit staff functions of Devilish to room description editing.
Aww.
Used to be so innocent. All the things that happened have changed me. Internally, have changed me. And I somehow you taught in all of those I placed to keep me safe from going insane. So how do you expect me to fall asleep after the things you said to me, after the things you made me feel? The night goes on and on. The night goes on and on.
Did Taylor never put back the idols? He didn't. God, he's always stealing them.
I used to be so incomplete. I used to fear so many things.
I actually love that idea of Arnhem's. That'd be really cool. The official staff of banning. You just crack them over the head with it.
To be different, all I had to do was listen to the voice within.
On a serious note, that would probably never happen. I don't see people getting banned in Darkness Rises unless they're hacking to the degree that it's causing actual harm to the game. I mean, if people are, quote, bad, unquote, the worst they'll get is probably a clever timeout of some kind. I've always hated the idea of putting people in jail for minor infractions. Like what they did in DFC.
I don't know about that, brother. I'm gonna be watching people like a hawk.
Yeah, right.
Did you say
You'll be
the
the
S
worst
word?
one of them all.
That's a mark on your account. It's a hidden mark.
Love that voice.
Oh, he said the S and the F word. That's 2 marks.
You give one more, you're going straight to jail.
Yeah.
Yes, God.
It's something to think about. So we're gonna have to have a system in place for the occasions. Excuse me, sorry. So yeah, we're working on it.
What I would love is for most of the stuff is to be handled by actual players. Bring back the KOSs, bring back the kill on sites. That's what we need. Let the players take care of it.
That's true, actually. So KOS is an instant double the amount of realm points. And if you kill them, you get those realm points, and you can loot their corpse. And then when they're